Chapter 31. Captive Desire. Sierra's gaze was fixated through the glass at Guan Yin, whose face bore an inhuman expression, seemingly sculpted from cold, indifferent stone. The murmur of Eckhard's limousine pulling to a halt nearby barely reached her consciousness. "How shall this play out?" Eckhard inquired, his tone suggesting a semblance of choice where Sierra perceived none. Sierra turned to face him, her expression resolute, her eyes pools of cold steel. Her mind raced, weighing his words. What could he possibly mean by giving her a choice? She was his captive, a prey marked by Guan Yin. What possible alternatives were there, she thought? Her silence hung heavy in the air, a silent battle of wills unfolding between captive and captor as the quiet tension seeped into the confines of the limousine, tainting the atmosphere with unspoken possibilities. Sierra's fingers tightened around the revolver's grip even more, as if drawing strength from the cold metal. "Guess I take the bitch down, and 5 more before they manage to cut me down." A rush of exhilaration flooded through Eckhard as her words resonated in the confined space, not stemming from fear, but a profound passion invoked by Sierra's unyielding spirit. He dared not reveal this admiration to her. Instead, he strived to maintain his composure, his voice steady, but the flame in his eyes betraying his fervor. "Well, that certainly is one option, albeit rather finite. The other would be allying yourself with us." He studied Sierra intently, scrutinizing her reactions. The air was saturated with a delicate dance of defiance and possibility, with each heartbeat echoing like a clandestine whisper. The subsequent silence was a battlefield of unspoken words and unresolved tensions, awaiting the inevitable clash of resolve and destiny. Sierra, taken aback by his proposition, instantly recoiled. "There's no way in hell I'd align myself with Nazis," she declared with resolute defiance. Before she could fuel her statement with more fervor, Eckhard raised his hand, halting her words. "You misunderstand. My father's era is on the verge of collapse, and with it, we can dispense with the ominous symbols of the bygone times. We can rise, reconstruct stronger and better from its remnants. We possess the resources, the infrastructure. Or, my dear, as you aptly put it, there's always option A. The choice is yours." Although option A was her brainchild, it offered no prospect of continued existence. She wasn't prepared to award Eckhard the satisfaction of acknowledging a victorious sway over her, nor was she inclined to embrace his offer. However, battling the deep magnetic allure that Eckhard radiated was becoming increasingly arduous. As she locked eyes with him, the profound blue depths seemingly a realm of concealed yearnings, she could sense the struggle within him, a whirling desire of unspoken words. Her instincts perceived the unbridled want lurking within, a captivating dance of temptation and repulsion. The air charged with electric tension, an intricate ballet of choices and consequences, pulling at the threads of her desires. With a sultry lean forward, Sierra intensified the charged atmosphere around them. Their eyes, worlds colliding in silent conversations, drew invisible lines in the air. Her hand, steadfast on her revolver, perceived a fleeting change in his azure gaze as the clicks of the door handle echoed in the tense silence. Her instincts were validated by a subtle squint in his eyes. Moving with a fluidity mirroring smoke weaving through the breeze, she slid out of the door as it surrendered to her force, her hand clasping her pistol with poised readiness. As she was about to straighten, her senses heightened in mid-draw. She discerned the distinct sound of the opposite door of the limousine swinging open, and Eckhard's voice cutting through the air, a desperate cry of, "Don't fire! Stand down!" The air resonated with the clicks of weapon safeties disengaging, merging into the unfolding dance of confrontation of restraint. The scene was a silent ballet of decisions, movements, threading through every heartbeat. Sierra looked over her shoulder with a passionate smirk on her face, directed at Eckhard as she said softly and sensually, "Gotcha." Eckhard's eyes widened, layers of concern etched across his face, retracting momentarily. A landscape of rapid calculations and interpretations unfolded behind his sapphire gaze. What is the meaning of this? Eckhart, Commander Guan Yin demanded vehemently, her voice a sharp blade slicing through their eardrums as the convoy aligned itself in seamless formation behind them. Clearing his throat, Eckhart maintained a composed facade, gesturing toward Sierra as he spoke. This is a partnership. Have your men stand down and begin distributing the supplies. Guan Yin, her expression shadowed by a tempest of indignation, vehemently protested. She is a prisoner! Seize her! She is wanted for the murder of many ranking members! Before either Sierra or Eckhart could react, soldiers swarmed, disarming Sierra swiftly, their shackles fastening around her wrists as she struggled, her muscles knotting in desperate resilience. The skirmish unfolded rapidly, her ferocity rendering two soldiers unconscious before a sudden, blinding strike sent stars sprawling across her vision, her world plunging into a dark void. Sierra felt the tight constraints bite into her flesh as she moved, each step resonating with a sharp sting. The rawness of the shackles was nothing compared to the swirling turmoil within her mind. A week spent in the confining solitude of the tunnel was a relentless battle of wit and will, a constant struggle against the darkness of despair. Each step she took under the guard's watchful eye was a dance between submission and defiance, her every fiber vibrating with anger. The environment was a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness she was drawn from, the artificial light harshly illuminating the cold, sterile surroundings of the facility. She used her heightened senses to survey her surroundings, the walls whispering secrets, the distant hum of machinery singing a sinister song. Her mind became a sharpened blade, slicing through the fog of her captivity. The guard, a silent puppet in Guan Yin's theater, moved with mechanical precision, his demeanor a mask of impassivity. Her eyes, the gateway to her unbroken spirit, burned with a fire of resilience, silently challenging every figure lurking in the corners of the facility. Her body, though battered and shackled, moved with a grace that whispered of her untamed strength. As she was led through the labyrinth of the facility, each step was a testament to her unbroken will, each heartbeat a strike upon a drum of war. She was ready to let the world know. She was unbroken, unbound, and unafraid. Sierra became sharply aware of her constraints, feeling them bite into her flesh as she was placed against the cold rock wall, thoughts racing, recapping the rapid unfolding of events that accrued before the darkness of imprisonment. Around her, murmur of a heated conversation infiltrated her senses, voices of Eckhart and Guan Yin embroiled in a fierce dispute. An exchange that seemed to be tilting unfavorably for Eckhart. Her mind whirled, thoughts tangled as she tried to discern her next move in the fog of confusion enveloping her senses. Though Guan Yin spoke very aggressively, Eckhart, maintaining a facade of calmness honed by his training in communications in Germany, addressed Guan Yin with restrained irritation. "What the hell do you think you are doing, Guan?" Keeping his composure was a vital lesson he had learned, one that could mean the difference between success and failure in tense situations. "She is wanted, and a prisoner, and it is time for punishment." Guan Yin replied with assertive clarity, her tone unyielding. "She will be executed for her crimes, Mr. Eckhart. You and your father handed us this control. I have waited long enough to have this problem solved." Eckhart, his voice a careful balance of insistence and diplomacy, responded, "There are always limits, Guan, and this is one of them. It is strategic to use her to gain control over others, and I must insist she is released." His words floated in the charged air between them, a delicate dance of power unfolding, both keenly aware of the stakes that lie in the balance of this confrontation. "Well, since this agreement involves you, Mr. Victor, and us, perhaps we should contact him. We shall see what he says about the limits to our agreement," Guan Yin suggested with hint of deviance in her voice, her gaze unwaveringly on Eckhart. Eckhart, recalling his last conversation with his father regarding Sierra and pondering over women's ability to manipulate men, raised a finger, signaling for a pause. He turned away as though he was about to make a call to his father, which he had absolutely no intention of doing. Extracting his phone from his pocket, he started walking back towards his limousine, maintaining a facade of intended communication. However, a quick, surreptitious glance back revealed a dire scenario. Guan Yin had guards holding Sierra, one on each side, and she was steadily raising her pistol towards her captive. Panic sparked in Eckhard's eyes, but he suppressed it, quickly contemplating his next move. The tense of the looming threat, silent calculations, and strained alliances, each second dripping like a droplet of time, threatening to plunge them all into irreversible chaos. Eckhard turned, saying, "Commander Guan Yin, I propose we discuss this matter with my father in person. Don't you agree?" Eckhard's voice layered with composed confidence, his senses heightened. Guan Yin, her pistol steadfastly aimed at Sierra, seemed more intrigued by his formal address than his actual proposition. "Mr. Eckhard, with a simple pull of this trigger, our need for further discussion evaporates." For the first time, Eckhard experienced an overpowering impulse to thwart another's impending doom. His heart raced, his body coiled in tense anticipation, every muscle fiber ready to spring into action. His mind, however, was calculating coldly, brutally pointing out the difference between time it would take for Guan Yin to complete her lethal gesture and distance he needed to cover to prevent it. The inexorable conclusion was that time was a luxury he didn't possess. The briefest fragment of a second elongated into a drawn-out, inexorable moment, a silent battle of wills, decisions hanging by the thinnest of threads, tottering on the edge of irrevocable consequences. The slight flicker in Eckhard's eyes, the imperceptible tightening of Guan Yin's finger around the trigger, and the anxious breaths of Sierra were the unseen tumultuous waves in this ocean of stillness. Eckhard made his first move. He could feel every muscle in his body tense, preparing for the lunge. But before he could close the distance, a violent splash appeared out the side of Guan Yin's head, and the world seemed to stand still. Eckhard froze mid-step, his mind trying to comprehend the sudden change in the scenario. He watched, eyes wide, as her arm holding the pistol started to droop, as if moving through thick molasses. The weapon fell from her lifeless grasp, clattering onto the ground, the sound like a distant thunderclap in Eckhard's ears. The world around him blurred, focusing all its existence on the falling figure of Guan Yin. It was as if gravity itself had slowed to prolong her fall, the once commanding figure now collapsing like a marionette with its strings severed, her body crumpling to the ground in a disjointed, lifeless heap. Eckhard's mind raced, attempting to process the sudden, unexpected turn of events. The silence that followed was thick, an entity, shattered only by the rustling wind and the raspy breaths of Sierra. The assailant was unseen, unknown, the bullet's origin a mystery. Eckhard, caught between shock and a need to act, scanned his surroundings, searching for the source, the hidden savior, or possibly a new enemy lurking just beyond the entrance. Eckhard's senses were on high alert as the muffled reports of distant rifle fire reached his ears. It was almost surreal, watching the guards slump lifelessly to the ground, their hold on Sierra relinquishing even before the sound waves of the lethal shots reached him. "Sniper!" he yelled instinctively. As his warning raced through the tense air, more Chinese soldiers dropped, their bodies crumpling in silent, abrupt submission to the invisible Reaper. The cold reality of the situation set in, and Eckhard's survival instincts kicked into overdrive. Staying low to the ground, he swiftly maneuvered back towards the armored sanctuary of his limousine, every sense heightened, and every muscle poised for evasive action. He knew the sniper's proficiency meant that open ground was a death sentence, and cover was his only ally. Eckhard could feel the crosshairs potentially tracking him, the invisible gaze evaluating, considering, deciding. His mind was a tempest of thoughts, swirling around the mystery of the sniper. Is this unseen guardian angel here to save Sierra? Impossible. Nobody knows she is here. The sudden appearance of the old Dodge Power Wagon monster truck was like a vision out of a mirage, its rugged frame and rumbling engine raced through the entrance. The surrounding was filled with the resounding reports of Robert's high-powered Noreen 30-06 rifle, each shot delivering calculated and unerring doom to the enemy. Katie, with her fluid, experienced moves, dispatched lethal rounds from high up in the passenger side window as her eyes ablaze with the fires of battle. Behind the wheel, Carter maneuvered the monstrous vehicle with a blend of precision and aggression, a conductor orchestrating a deadly delivery of death. Sierra's senses, initially swamped by the darkness of her captivity, rallied with acute precision. The sensation of the icy shackles retracting from her wrists, facilitated by the key procured from her lifeless guard, bestowed a surge of liberation. The cold metal falling away was a whisper of freedom dancing on her liberated skin. Her eyes darted between her saviors and her former captors, the scene playing out in slow motion, a vivid display of death. Sierra's steps were quick as she approached the lifeless form of Guan Yin, her senses sharp and alert. Retrieving her weapons from the cold grip of her adversary felt like reclaiming her very soul. The familiar weight of her revolver and Glock was reassuring, grounding her in a reality that was ever-changing. Her eyes scanned the ongoing battle, adrenaline pumping in her veins, giving her clarity and focus. The familiar faces, Robert, Katie, and Carter, each in their elements, seemed like the embodiments of salvation. Her questions on how they're coming together were numerous, but the sudden convergence of paths in this merciless world seemed like fate's cryptic design. And as Sierra gripped her weapons, feeling the comforting coldness of the metal against her skin, she knew that this unplanned reunion had tremendous timing. Eckhardt's heart raced as he witnessed the monster truck's rampage playing out before him. The area buzzed with relentless gunfire, a mash pit of violence. His thoughts were a whirlwind, trying to comprehend the sudden turn of events and the appearance of this formidable, unexpected rescue. As the large truck turned back, heading towards the limousine, Eckhardt's remained steadfast and calm. He was lost in his own thoughts, considering the potential outcomes and repercussions of this sudden onslaught. Then, a soft tapping sound cut through his reverie. He turned, diverting his attention from the rampaging truck, to see Sierra standing outside his door, the cold steel of her pistol tapping rhythmically on the glass, her eyes locked onto his with a gaze that was an intriguing anger, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of enjoyment. Eckhard hesitated for a moment. He looked at Sierra, the formidable woman who had been his captive, now standing as a free and dangerous adversary. Or was she an ally? He was treading on a thin line between war and peace, and he knew that his next action would define the course of his future in this ravaged world. Eckhard sat there, his heart swimming in his chest as he watched Sierra move with a grace that was lethal and sensual, the dichotomy of her essence rendering him breathless. The moment seemed to slow as she gave the glass a lingering kiss, a promise or a tease etched in her movements, leaving him haunted by the shadow of her lips. He felt the protective layers around him being stripped away as he unlocked the door, a symbol of trust, a vulnerability given to the woman who held his life in her hands. Sierra's rolling eyes and the sensual wave of her revolver's barrel spoke volumes, a siren call to him as she turned away. The sight of her jumping onto the running board, her figure a powerful yet graceful entity against the monstrous truck, left him entrapped in a moment of passion as he heard her call out, "Getting up!"